canto, Questions by King Pritchett, Chapter 8, text 18. Ninam sadharano dharma savisheshashchayadrisha Shreninam rajarshinam cha dharma reshu jivatam Nrinam of human society. Sadharana, general. Dharma, religious affiliation. Savishesha, specific. Cha, also. Yadrisha, as they are. Shreninam, of the particular three classes. Rajarshinam, of the saintly royal order. Cha, also. Dharma, occupational duty. Kritseshu, in the matter of distressed conditions. Jivatam, of the living beings. Translation. Please also explain what may generally be the common religious affiliations of human society, as well as their specific occupational duties in religion, the classification of the social orders, as well as the administrative royal orders, and the religious principles for one who may be in distress. Purport. The common religion of all classes of human beings, regardless of whosoever and whatsoever one may be, is devotional service. Even the animals may be included in devotional service to the Lord, and the best example is set by Sri Rajangaji, or Hanuman, the great devotee of Lord Sri Ram. As you've already discussed, even the aborigines and cannibals can also be engaged in the devotional service of the Lord if they happen to be under the guidance of a genuine devotee of the Lord. In the Skanda Purana, there's a narration that a hunter in the jungle became the most enlightened devotee of the Lord by the guidance of Sri Narada Muni. Therefore, devotional service to the Lord can be equally shared by every living being. Religious affiliation, in terms of different countries and cultural circumstances, is obviously not the common religion of the human being. Rather, the basic principle is devotional service. Even if a particular type of religious principle does not recognize the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the followers still have to obey the disciplinary principles laid down by a particular leader. Such a leader of a religious sect is never the supreme leader, because such a circumstantial leader comes to the position of leadership after undergoing some penance. The Supreme Personality of Godhead does not, however, require to be under disciplinary action to become leader, as we see in the activities of Lord Krishna. The occupational duties of the castes and orders of society, following the principles of livelihood, also depend on the principle of devotional service. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that a person can achieve the highest perfection of life simply by awarding the results of his occupational duty unto the devotional service of the Lord. People following the principles of devotional service to the Lord can never be put into difficulty, and thus there cannot be any question of apad dharma, or religion in distress. As will be explained in this book by the greatest authority, Srila Shukadeva Goswami, There is no religion save and except the devotional service of the Lord, though this may be presented in different forms. Translation again. Please also explain what may generally be the common religious affiliations of human society, as well as their specific occupational duties in religion, the classification of the social orders, as well as the administrative royal order, and the religious principles for one who may be in distress. Om Gyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militang Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This chapter, Questions by King Pritchett, is giving you training in how to ask questions and what is the purpose of questioning. Sometimes people mistakenly think that bhakti is all about sentiment and love as they ordinarily understand it. And they think that knowledge is not so important, or they even think that the bhakti path is not so much to do with knowledge, but the bhakti path is all about just your feeling. But this chapter teaches you, by the example of King Pritchett, that an essential part of bhakti is asking questions. Not only asking questions, but asking them in the right way. So this chapter presents Pritchett Maharaj humbly and sincerely questioning Shukadeva Goswami. And Pritchett Maharaj has the confidence, I'm speaking to someone who can actually shed light. Otherwise, what's the use in asking questions to someone who is lacking the required knowledge for giving a proper answer? Questioning in bhakti is very conscientious, or shall we say it's not just a casual matter, not just a formality. Questioning in bhakti involves your ability to ask a proper question. And to whom are you asking the question? Now, as you know, life is full of questions and answers. So you can categorize your life, you can classify your life according to the types of questions that fill your day. But you can make a study that throughout the day and into the night you are asking questions. Bhagavatam will try to convince you that questions about Krishna are most essential for a true human being. You can't avoid asking questions. Srila Prabhupada points out in one purport in Bhagavatam that if you could understand the language of the birds and the bees and other creatures, you would find out that they're always asking questions. Where is food? Where is food? In their own way. So what makes a human being's questioning any different? Therefore, questions about Krishna are so essential. And they're so beneficial. You would ordinarily think that you're asking someone a question would not be so beneficial for that person, what to speak of those who happen to be within earshot. But questions about Krishna are so beneficial for the world that they purify the one who asks the question, the one who answers the question, and the audience that hears the questioning and the answer. So much so that the very place where questions and answers about Krishna happen, even after the audience, the questioner, the answerer leaves, that place still has a purifying effect on anyone who walks through it. This is how practical is questioning about Krishna. Because you may think, well, really, look at the world and its problems. What can Bhakti do about that? But the problems in the world are due to a dirty heart and the lack of adequate purificatory processes for dealing with dirty hearts. So what you see is an overabundance, a glut of human beings who are running around with dirty consciousness. Dirty heart means dirty consciousness. And they don't have access to the proper spiritual technology, applied spiritual technology for purifying their consciousness, purifying their heart. So therefore they can try this political solution, that economic solution, but meanwhile material nature is harassing. Because material nature is saying your societies are not properly focused on what is the real purpose of human life. Therefore, you're going to be harassed by the laws of nature. You're violating your mandate. Your human body gives you that mandate, that you must use it to revive your connection with Krishna. You're not doing that. Therefore, what's the use of you on this planet? And even if you go by material methods, which you can, even if you go to another planet, what are you going to do there? Is that going to save the human race? No, they'll trash that planet out too. Because the same consciousness is still there. So we really need to understand the practicality of Bhagavatam. It's not just a holy book, a scripture. Those words in the Western world, amongst the younger generation, those words are not very popular. Oh, you're going to read a scripture. You have a holy book. You would never say that to your friends or your relatives, unless you're in the older generation like some of us. But now you would never say that. So therefore, whenever I'm speaking, especially at outside events, I always use the terminology, the Bhakti texts, the Bhakti yoga texts. Ooh. Okay. Yeah. The yoga texts. It's true, Srimad Bhagavatam is the supreme yoga text. So what is Srimad Bhagavatam doing for us? Amidst these questions by Pritchett and the answers by Shukadeva Goswami. The answers will be coming in the next chapter. And note that although Pritchett Maharaj asks a slew of questions, Shukadeva Goswami is not going to answer them necessarily in the order that the questions were asked. Shukadeva Goswami will answer according to his own categorization. He will answer everything, but he'll group the answers according to his vision. So Srila Prabhupada points out that the genuine representative of Krishna is not beholden to answer questions in a particular order that the disciple presents. But the answers come according to how the spiritual master feels can be best understood and applied. And in the case of Shukadeva Goswami, you've also got to deal with ecstasy. Real ecstasy, not the pharmaceutical stuff, but real ecstasy in terms of speaking about Krishna. That ecstasy of Shukadeva Goswami shapes his conversation, even changes the flow of his answering. Sometimes he just gets lost in ecstasy. And you'll see in the 10th canto, Shukadeva Goswami speaks about Krishna's pastimes and puts the pastimes out of chronological order. So you may wonder, what's this? He's supposed to be perfect, infallible. But you have to understand what is infallibility according to Srimad Bhagavatam. The infallibility is not chronological order, because you can see Shukadeva Goswami has scrambled it a bit. The infallibility is that he's always in ecstatic love for Krishna, so whatever he does, whether in order or out of order, produces ecstatic love for Krishna, which is reality. Even in the spiritual world, you can say Krishna makes mistakes. He gets bewildered seeing Srimati Radharani's beauty, and he starts milking a bull instead of a cow. So is that a mistake in the way we ordinarily think? No. The real perfection, the real infallibility is ecstasy in love. But we've been so disappointed, we've been so let down in our relationships that we don't understand what is real perfection. The real perfection is ecstatic, pure, loving exchanges with Krishna. So much so that Shukadeva Goswami will become overwhelmed talking about Krishna and apparently make mistakes. But there's no mistake in that the real standard is love of Krishna. This is why in Chaitanya Charitamrita, the point is often brought up that it is very difficult for an ordinary person to understand ecstatic lovers of Krishna. You'll see mistakes from your mundane point of view. Just like Srila Prabhupada sometimes misquotes a verse and asks, what is that verse again? He asks someone else. But his ecstatic love for Krishna is always there, and that is the standard. So we're hypocritical. We talk about, love, I want love. Love is all you need. Love is what makes the world go around. And then when Bhagavatam presents the pinnacle of love, well, wait a minute now. Mythology. Or things out of order. No, the Bhagavatam is presenting you true perfection, which is pure love of Krishna, pure loving relationships with Krishna. So some of the questions that Parikshit Maharaj asks are about society, as this verse today shows. Tell me about the various divisions in society. What do they do? Tell me about the common understanding of what is religious affiliation, which isn't very deep at all. Parikshit Maharaj is hinting. A body-based religion is, what is that? As Prabhupada writes in the purport, religious affiliation in terms of different countries and cultural circumstances is obviously not the common religion of the human being. Rather, the basic principle is devotional service. Otherwise, people are born into this religion, born into that religion. A particular religion is predominant in this part of the world, another religion is predominant in another part of the world. But that kind of body-based religious affiliation or socially based religious affiliation is not what the Bhagavatam is zeroing in on. The Bhagavatam is presenting devotional service as the common dharma, the essential dharma, the sanatan dharma, the eternal essence of the human being. In other words, somehow or other, you're going to find scraps or bits of devotional service turning up everywhere you look. This religion, that religion has some element of devotional service. This activity, that activity will show that someone is serving someone or somehow. Someone is serving someone or something, somehow, somewhere. So that's why we always say it, although we don't think too deeply when we say it. But we always say, everyone is always a servant. Perhaps you can remember telling that to a guest or a newcomer. We're all servants. At every moment, 24/7, we're rendering service to someone or something, but we don't apply that to ourselves and our relationship with our mind and senses, and how the mind and the senses exact service from us. That's why you have that famous prayer by, I believe, Raghunath Das Goswami, who says, I've served my senses so faithfully, but they never grant a holiday. At least here in Australia, you can count on having some holidays per year. What is it, generally 1 month? Or they're always reducing it. But 1 month, you can count on having a holiday. But Raghunath Das Goswami says, I've been such a loyal, dedicated servant of my mind and senses, but they never grant the slightest holiday. So Bhakti knowledge is about facing the reality. You are a servant. Now what is the best way for you to serve? So there are questions by King Pritchett about the organization of society, just like today's verse, because Varnashram Dharma is the ultimate human organizational system. That's why the Bhagavatam talks about it. And it's Krishna's system which makes it unavoidable. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Chaturvarnam Mayastristam Gunakarma Vibhagata. This system of the 4 occupational orders is coming from me. It's a material system, no doubt, but it's coming from Krishna. It's Krishna's personal design system for how human affairs should be organized. Of course, you've got that same Krishna who, as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, I'm not any occupational order. I'm not any social division. I am simply Gopi Bhartu Parakamalaya Dasa Dasa Dasa. I am the servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna, who's the maintainer of the gopis. That's transcendental, totally. That's pure bhakti. But what about those who are not ready for unconditional devotional service? What about those who have attachments that they're clinging to while still being religious and kind of spiritual? That's why you have the Varnashrama system of 4 social orders and 4 occupational orders. It's meant to bring people gradually, step by step, even birth by birth, to the standard of real dharma, pure, unconditional loving service to Krishna. I was speaking the other day at the Krishna village about the notion of unconditional love. And I was a bit surprised that no one present there remembered or was around back in the 90s in Australia when the buzzword was unconditional love. No one here remembers that? Yes. It was a real fad, wasn't it? There was this, I think there was this book called Course of Miracles or something like that. Yes. That along with Celestine Prophecy. How many of you were? No, it was all, there's one way in the back. Yes. In the 90s, this was all the rage. It's all about unconditional love. But you never saw anyone able to define thoroughly what is unconditional love, what to speak of acting in that way. Because material life is conditional. And everything that's a product of material life is conditional. But Bhagavatam is educating you into what is unconditional love. And simultaneously, while educating you, it's transforming you. So the Bhagavatam is not simply informational. Although this chapter presents so many topics that would catch the curiosity of any metaphysically minded person. Wow, this is out of this world. That's generally the first reaction you have when you first read Srimad Bhagavatam as a neophyte. Wow! Other planets. Then people from other creatures from other planets, and wow! Brahma born from a lotus flower, from the navel of Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, and Mahavishnu breathing out universes from the hair holes of his body. I mean, wow! My first reaction upon reading parts of the Bhagavatam before, this is late 1972. I hadn't yet attended any Bhakti gatherings, any temple, any center, any Krishna village or whatever. Nothing. I was just reading the books at home, intent, determined to avoid the strange Hare Krishna devotees. Second canto Bhagavatam. The book hadn't been printed yet, but there were chapters released in limited printing by the BBT, so I had gotten one of those. So I was reading that and I was thinking, wow, this is just beyond any human being's ability to fabricate. I was thinking, look, I've had the best education in the Western world. I know the power of the human intellect. This is just totally out of this universe. So it's fascinating, the information. But we have to understand that while we're being informed, we're also being transformed. Let's consider the crucial aspects of bhakti. You're chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. Is the Hare Krishna mantra representing Krishna? No. Some persons are nodding their heads, but I say no. The Hare Krishna mantra is Krishna. It's a big difference. You're in front of the deities. Shri Shri Radha Govardhana Dari, Shri Shri Gauranitai, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram. Do the deities represent Krishna? No. They are directly the presence of Krishna. See, oh my God, that's way beyond me. I'm just kind of mumbling my japa and trying to follow the regular principles and trying to show up at the temple sometimes, and everyone bows down, so I bow down. What do you want out of me? What more? I'm with it, I'm part of the community, I go through the motions, I follow the rituals, What more do you want out of me? But as we become more and more purified in bhakti, we start to understand we are dealing with the direct presence of Krishna. And that is a very humbling and impactful realization, which increases, if your bhakti lifestyle is correct, this realization that you're dealing directly with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You're not dealing representationally. This is what separates the neophytes from devotees who are advancing. So the beginning of this chapter is stressing that by your hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, you are in the presence of Krishna. So you may ask yourself, well, okay, yeah, I can understand that or appreciate it theoretically, but meanwhile my mind is raging, my body is pushing me this way and that way. How is it that by my sitting here, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, I'm directly in the presence of Krishna? This takes some time to fully experience. But the experience begins by your submissively hearing. Okay, let me hear Parikshit Maharaj's questions. Let me hear Shukadeva Goswami's answers. Let me hear. Just by that attitude, let me hear. The transcendental magic of the Bhagavatam starts to work on you. In the beginning of this chapter, Parikshit Maharaj presents himself to Shukadeva Goswami. I wish to know. That's very important. Without that desire to know, you don't have any spiritual dynamics. Because the bhakti path is such that in order to avoid pitfalls and in order to avoid impediments, you have to ask questions to someone. The saying in ordinary life is, love is blind. Sometimes you see a couple and you don't say it to them, of course, but you, God, what does he see in her? You've all done it, right? Anyway, you can't say anything. Why? Love is blind. But in bhakti, love is not blind. Love is about increasing awareness of Krishna's unlimited attractiveness. So some of the questions that Parikshit Maharaj asks are they're for everyone, but they also are particularly focused on different bhakti developments. Some of his questions are for those who have neutral love of Krishna, Jantaras. Some of his questions are for those who have servitude love of Krishna, Dasya. Just like the first questions he asks are, number one, how does a pure spirit soul acquire a material body? Does it happen? Yudhichthaya hetunava. Does it happen by chance? Or does it happen by some reason, some cause? That's his first question. In other words, we're pure spirit soul. How the hell do we get a material body? And then his next questions are, okay, we have material bodies, but Krishna also has a body. And he talks about the bodies of the various Vishnu expansions of Krishna. Brahma was born from a lotus flower that comes from the navel of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. Does that mean that Brahma's body and the body of Vishnu are the same? Because Brahma took birth from the lotus flower coming from that navel of Vishnu? With ordinary logic, you would think, well, what comes from something is the same as that something. They both are of the same quality. So Parikshit Maharaj wants to clear that up. He wants that point cleared up. Also, he says, look, you can say that the Supreme Personality of Godhead assumes a particular gigantic body, like Vishnu, for the purpose of the creation. Mahavishnu breathing out the universes, Brahma taking birth from the lotus flower, from the navel of Vishnu. So this all seems to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead taking a body, assuming a body for a particular purpose. So what's the difference then between that kind of body assumed apparently for a particular purpose and creatures taking bodies of ants or elephants for a particular purpose? You get it? Mm-hmm. Material nature is full of creatures that have a body taken for a particular purpose. Just like the other day we were talking about, what are those birds with the long... Ibis. You watch them. Their beak is perfectly designed for pecking at whatever it wants to eat. So the Bhagavatam is saying, hey, flip this situation over and understand that there's a creature that wants to experience life in this way. So therefore, material nature has provided, from its body shop, it has provided a particular type of body. So someone could say, well, the Supreme Personality of Godhead wants to deal with the universe, so he expands himself into a body that can deal with the creation. So what's the difference? The ant has its tiny body for its purposes, to carry away tiny microscopic grains of sugar. The elephant has its huge body for its purpose. So similarly, the principle of taking a body for a particular purpose seems to be universal. In other words, you can't distinguish the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead from other bodies just by the size of the body. That's the point. Some creature assumes a tiny body of an ant. Another creature assumes a big body of an elephant. And the Supreme Personality of Godhead, well, by George, he takes a big body because he's got to breathe out universes. So obviously then all the bodies are of the same quality. But Pritchard Maharaj doesn't want you to speculate like that. He's going to get you to think about the quality of the different bodies. Just like in Bhagavad Gita, as you know. Krishna says, Sambhavami Atmamaya. Even though my body is spiritual, it's inexhaustible. Even though I'm the Lord of all sentient, all conscious beings, even though I'm unborn, I still appear in the material atmosphere, but I come my own way through my own conduit. So in other words, it's not that, well, I'm here in the material world, and Krishna comes to the material world, and so therefore it's even Steven. No. Krishna says, Sambhavami Atmamaya, I have my own methodology for coming into the material world, which is unlike your methodology. You're forced by material nature. I come my own way, due to my own sweet will. Of course, Krishna gives a schedule for his coming. Once every day of Brahma. But he doesn't have to conform to that schedule. But still he gives it. So it's very important for Pritchard Maharaj to clear up doubts and confusions about Krishna's body. And the acharyas point out that this clearing up of doubts about Krishna's body is especially, it's meant for everyone, but it's especially for those situated in certain relationships with Krishna. And that's what Srimad Bhagavatam is about in the immediate sense and the ultimate sense. You'll read in this chapter, you've already read if you come to class every day, Swanam Bhava Sororuham. The sound vibration of Srimad Bhagavatam enters into the ear of the sufficiently advanced person and then sits on the lotus of your heart and cleanses any remaining traces of lust, anger, and greed. And in this way, your original relationship with Krishna becomes revealed. Swanam Bhava Sororuham. So it's very important that we take the hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam very seriously. So you may be attending class ritualistically. Well, to be an upstanding member of someone who lives on the property here, I must show up at Bhagavatam class sometimes. Now we're talking about normal times when there's, not a virus situation. So you attend because, that's what you're supposed to do, especially as a new practitioner. You've got to show that you're sort of serious, Especially you want to get a spiritual name, so So you show up for Bhagavatam class, and you get your spiritual name, and then you're staunch for a couple of years, and then you loosen up a bit, become a bit more flexible. And you show up for Bhagavatam class maybe once a month, and then you come on Janmashtami. If we don't have a deep understanding of Srimad Bhagavatam, we can take it in that way. But still, even if you take it in that superficial way, you still have incalculable benefit. I was discussing with one devotee yesterday about Srila Prabhupada's conviction in taking so many disciples, even though they all didn't sustain their bhakti practice. So much so that he said, don't be surprised who leaves, be surprised who stays. So, this attrition rate among devotees in the Western world can be very discouraging. They can't do as those from Bharat can do, by kind of just hide out behind cultural trappings and cultural labels and no, it's the Western world is either you're in the bhakti life or you're out of it. There's no middle ground. Whereas in the world in India, there's a twilight zone area. Neither day nor night. You know how to go through all the externals, the rituals. Dandavats Maharaj. It's all your mercy. Yes, I put something in the hundi. I used the device there. Jai Shri Krishna. Which is something. But in the Western world, whatever you do, you're full on. When you're starting bhakti, you're generally fully into it. And then your memory of how much you suffered in material life starts to fade. And you think, well, maybe I should get a refresher course. Just to be balanced and be able to deal with everyone in the world. So this attrition rate is a reality. And I would often say that in terms of someone trying to do the service of initiating devotees, the attrition rate is an occupational hazard. But what was Prabhupada's attitude? He says, I am doing my preaching mission on the authority of Narada Muni, who said, even if they come and go, that's better than they never come at all. So that is the authority of Narada Muni, who said, better you start bhakti and fade, but you don't have to fade. But even if you fade, you're still better off than if you never came at all. So Srila Prabhupada emphasized, I'm doing this on the authority of Narada Muni. He says that. Of course, no one has to go away. But the material energy is very relentless, and we can be very weak. So the more we understand how to in-depth hear Srimad Bhagavatam, the more protected we are against the ravages of the illusory energy. As we said, and as this chapter points out, Srimad Bhagavatam is the presence of Krishna directly. And by associating with the sound vibration of Srimad Bhagavatam, you become purified, so much so that your original loving relationship with Krishna becomes revealed. So this is the journey of Srimad Bhagavatam. From ritualistic hearing in the beginning, or curious hearing in the beginning, way down to the end of reviving your dormant love for Krishna. So what can help our hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam? Our lifestyle. It's not that you can have a disordered, scrambled attempt at a bhakti lifestyle and then show up at Bhagavatam class and, now I shall hear with rapt attention. It doesn't work like that. You have to have the whole package. So if you're serious about hearing the Hare Krishna mantra, if you're serious about hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, then you're serious about your bhakti lifestyle. So we pointed out already how all the questions in this chapter are good for everyone, but at the same time, some questions are especially triggering certain members of the audience. Those who are practicing bhakti mixed with karmic activity. Some questions point to them. Some are practicing pure bhakti And the questions are aimed at them. Just like questions about, in this chapter, there's one question about practicing bhakti and being indifferent to karma, the ups and downs of karma. Pritchett Maharaj asks very eloquently, the results of karma are destroyed by either tiny divisions of time or huge divisions of time. But in any case, the results of karma are transient. So that's a question, the acharyas point out, particularly meant for those practicing pure devotional service, because they are supposed to be indifferent to the roller coaster ride of karma, the ups and downs and all arounds. Know that it is external. So the pure bhakta is simply focused on Krishna's service in all circumstances, how to desire Krishna's pleasure in all circumstances. So if you study the questions in this chapter, you'll actually learn how to ask questions in the most elevated way. At first, because and maybe you felt this too, but when, as a new devotee, 47, 48 years ago, I was reading these questions and wondering, well, what's so important about that? Why is that so crucial? But gradually, by hearing, your consciousness shifts. And, oh, well, this is very important. This is a crucial area of inquiry. But because in the beginning, you're imposing your own conceptions of what's important. Therefore, you kind of scratch your head. Well, why is he asking this? Why is he asking that? If I had my chance with Shukadeva Goswami, I would be asking such and such. How do you combine corporate advancement with bhakti? Relevant stuff. What do you do when your partner lets you down? How do you handle that in bhakti? These are burning questions. These are essential questions. Instead, you please also explain what may generally be the common religious affiliation of human society. Yeah. As well as their specific occupational duties in religion, the classification of the social orders. Oh, well, yeah, okay. But gradually, when we submissively hear these questions, we start to get insight into what a human being should be thinking about. But in the beginning, we're quite wild. No matter where we're from, Bharat or the West. If you're from Bharat, well, you think I know the rituals? Isn't that what it's all about, Before opening the Bhagavatam, I do Akshman, I do hand purification, then I open it, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, back on the shelf. Time to make money. If I'm from the West, then, oh, well, they say this book is spiritual. I'm really fried. I'm really exhausted with material life at this moment. And they say that this book can kind of give me insight. Yeah, okay, I'll give it a go. So in the beginning, whether we have a ritualistic attitude or a curious attitude, we don't understand Srimad Bhagavatam. But by repeated hearing, no matter where you're from, you become fortunate. And the greatest fortune is to revive your love for Krishna, and that means relationship. So this is why Lord Chaitanya said one of the main pillars of bhakti is hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. It is spotless, the Amala Purana, and you become spotless by hearing it. All right, any questions? We're waiting for the microphone, is that it? Or should he go on because you got it right now? Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I'd love to hear a little bit more from you about when you were talking about material and spiritual bodies. I was hearing Prabhupada say that Jesus Christ had the spiritual body, and that's why they weren't able to, it's impossible to kill him. So I'm a little bit confused. So was he in his eternal body, and the spiritual master, how does it, is it the material, the spiritual body is different?
For whom?
For the spiritual master, for example. Then you hear, for example, that the Pandavas went to the spiritual world in their original, in their body, that they were here.
So did Dhruva Maharaj.
Yes, and
so what are you mixing together here? Sounds like you're kind of cobbling together of...
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused. What is the different types of spiritual and material bodies, or?
You can have a spiritualized body because of complete absorption in devotional service. So your body is not spiritual, but it acts like a spiritual body. The old example, iron rod in fire is not fire, but acts like fire. And there are exceptional cases, like Dhruva Maharaj and the Pandavas, who went back to the spiritual world in their self-same bodies. So it's all going on. Why should you be restrictive? It's only this way and not that way. So Bhagavatam is introducing you to the whole panorama. It's blowing your mind. And it's always, Bhagavatam is always begging, Adi Keshava, read me, read me, read me. It's on your shelf begging, or it's on your e-reader device begging you, read me. I know you're working hard with a big family, but read me. Anything else? Yes.
Hare Krishna. I was just wondering, how do we encourage newcomers to start the Bhagavatam journey?
First, you have to inspire them to read Bhagavad Gita. And then you can inspire them to move to the graduate study, Srimad Bhagavatam. They'll be inspired by your enthusiasm. So the more you love to read the books, the more others will pick up on that. Anything else? Yes.
Hare Krishna. Thanks for a very inspiring class. My question is, if question isn't up there with Krishna, so who do you ask those questions to?
If
your question isn't actually, in the beginning you were talking about, if our question should be relating to Krishna.
Yes.
So maybe we want to talk more about our situation, or just the Grihastha ashram or something.
But that's all for the point of attaining Krishna. That's the real Grihastha ashram, right? How do I make my life more Krishna-centered? How do I deal with this situation or that situation so I can better serve Krishna? Those are all important questions.
Hare Krishna. You had mentioned about three Vishnus.
Yes.
So what are the names of their wives? Lakshmi Devi has three names. You like?
You like that detailed knowledge, huh?
I became curious when you mentioned that.
They're all different categories of Lakshmis. Very technical subject matter.
All right. No worries.
Yes, no worries. Just understand that everything belongs to Krishna and use it in his service.
Krishna Maharaj. My questions are regarding, you initially started your discourse on the ecstatic symptoms that devotees experience, especially Sukadeva Goswami. I was wondering how, as devotees who are practicing regulated sadhana bhakti, in what mood should we meditate on ecstatic symptoms and how we can best understand them, perhaps even enliven our spiritual lives in that way.
Just read about them. Don't try to imitate. Just read about them. Just like, who was I talking to? One devotee yesterday she and her husband were serving lunch. And some other, I asked her, when you were a young teenager, did you read romance novels? Oh, yes. So by reading the novels, even though you're not yet having a romance, you start to develop some kind of aspiration. So similarly, by reading about the advanced and most advanced, you start to, besides becoming purified, you also develop such aspirations. I want to attain that goal. You have to know what the goal is. Just like a 12-year-old girl, I imagine, reading a romance novel. Oh, that's what it's about. And then the heart starts to develop longings. So similarly, just like nectar of devotion, the second half of nectar devotion can seem otherworldly. The first half can seem very practical, sadhana bhakti, vaidhi bhakti, but the second half can seem to be very, shall we say, mystical. I always like to remember Srila Prabhupada's instruction about how to read nectar of devotion. He said, just read it and read it again and again, and gradually your realizations will increase, but don't immediately write me letters. Prabhupada, what is this? Prabhupada, what is that? Engage in devotional service, and as your bhakti develops, you'll be able to understand more. But we don't like that, right? I want to understand now. And sometimes in the academic world, the notion is that these strictures, these requirements that in order to understand a bhakti text, you have to have a certain consciousness. They think, sometimes, they think these are just Hindu taboos. I've got the text before me. Never mind my lifestyle. I can understand. Bhakti is state specific. According to the state of your consciousness, that determines what you realize, what you experience. So the more we engage in devotional service, the more our spiritual IQ increases. Yes.
In the previous purport to verse number 16.
Number 16 or 17?
16. Halfway down through the purport, Prabhupada says, by the grace of the Lord, the devotees are able to see everything in the universe within the mouth of the Lord. I was wondering, in relation to our own position, how we might interpret that, and what does that mean for us?
Lord Krishna, as you see, Lord Krishna showed his mother the complete universal creation within his mouth, while she, completely charmed by her son, wanted to look inside the mouth of the Lord just to see how much earth the child had eaten. By the grace of the Lord, the devotees are able to see everything in the universe within the mouth of the Lord. Perception is not under your control. By the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You can see this, you can see that, you can even see all the universes within the mouth of Krishna, as Mother Yashoda did. In other words, the verse is presenting the full potential. Doesn't mean that everyone's automatically able to see that, but the full potential of that situation is demonstrated by Mother Yashoda. But of course, Mother Yashoda is extraordinarily rare. Just like when you read Nectar of Devotion, there's so many ecstatic states presented that are very rare. But still, it's inspiring to know about them and purifying to hear about them. Yes?
Hare Krishna. I was reading just recently how hearing Srimad Bhagavatam frees one from fear. And the question came up in my mind that I also have heard, we hear that devotional service engages all of our emotional energies. And
it should. Doesn't mean automatic. You have to strive for that.
But I'm wondering, for fear, what's the perfection of that, or how does a practicing devotee engage that in connection with Krishna?
Fear of Maya. Oh, Krishna, please don't let me fall into Maya. And that fear is embedded in your lifestyle. Fear is not the ultimate in bhakti, but it's a good beginning, a necessary beginning. Just like in Sunday school and church, I was always taught the verse, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom." That's true. We accept that in bhakti. But it's the beginning of wisdom, but it's not the end of wisdom. The Bhagavatam has many verses about being afraid of the time factor, which is like a snake that gobbles up a frog. So an intelligent person's afraid. What I have can end at any moment. My body can be finished at any moment. That's intelligence. Of course, these days, persons may look down upon that kind of emotion and that kind of intelligence. Oh, come on. How are you going to enjoy when you're hung up on all those fears? Just like in London, last time I was there before COVID, on the buses in London, the Humane Society had put posters on all the buses on the outside. You see as the bus drives by, there's probably no God, so now you can just don't worry and enjoy your life. In other words, chuck out this fear stuff of some omniscient being that's going to judge you. And just get on with enjoying your life. What do you think? Again, the question, well, why isn't anyone enjoying? Well, we are for a moment, but that's just for a moment. But it's something. You bhakti yogis are depriving yourself of momentary enjoyment. People, they think like that. So what if it's momentary? It's there. Why deny yourself? You're restricting yourself, of course, because you see something better. But if you don't know what that better is, then it's natural to think, why should I control my senses? Why should I restrict myself? So finally, remember these 2 points about the material illusion and its taste. The taste is insubstantial, yet your quest for it, your appetite for it is insatiable. Those 2 words, insubstantial and insatiable, sum up the whole program of Maya. You're going to struggle and strive for something that cannot satisfy you, but still you won't give up the quest. Your appetite can never be satisfied. It's insatiable. So much so that your desires carry over into your next life and into the next life, and on and on and on it goes. So therefore, Krishna comes as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in this most degraded time and says, you can get the highest benefit just by chanting Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.